Okay. Hello, guys.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live. I'm sorry,
Did you do it?
Yeah, I did it.
You definitely did it.
That was the greatest cold open I've ever heard, by the way.
That
Hi
is
guys. Did you do it? What?
that is par for the course.
Yeah,
That's
this
actually
is-
better than normal because Asduration didn't forget to mute his stream this time.
That's
Oh.
scripted. No. What are you talking about? That's what we always do. Like, that's part of our show. We don't do fancy intros. We don't do elegant music or snazzy, like, hey, yo, blah, blah, I'm joined with some fantastic... No. It's just cold and easy. Like, that's it. You know what's coming.
I don't know what's coming, so surprise me.
I
God damn it!
I got nothing.
It has.
I got-
Seriously, I'm already angry. And this just started.
Oh, hey guys. Journey of 30. I'm Azration.
I'm Snaggerwolf.
And I'm ChiChi JJ, other known as Chirajaeden, other known as the Tforce podcast resident jungler / I'll play whatever position's open.
Yeah, that's me too, man. Except
Yep.
resident mid laner.
It's good to have some diversity when it comes to knowing a bunch of roles. Gives you better game knowledge as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we brought on ChiChi today, just like we brought on everybody else for roles, to talk about jungle. So this is gonna be an in-depth one, guys. It's gonna be kind of a lot. So for those of you that are under level 20, summoner level 20, I don't want you guys to pay too much mind to this until you get past 20, because as we're going to talk about later, runes are really important when it comes to jungle.
Runes are really important. Masteries are really important. It's when you're jungling before you hit 30, it's can be a nightmare just because you don't have the early stats to make your first couple clears
Yeah.
solid, and your early clears can completely, control the pace of the game that you're able to affect. So,
Yep. So we'll get more into that, deeper into that. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the champ rotation so that you guys know who
Oh,
we
you
recommend.
remembered? I thought I was going to have to remind you.
No,
again.
dude, I got this, man. I'm here. I'm just a little,
Oh,
I'm
before we get started, I do want to apologize for last week. My internet was not cooperating, and I think I was in that show for a total of 5 minutes. So sorry for that, and I think Asduration did a good job holding that one down.
did my best.
You did. You did a great job.
Oh.
And finally, it was me that screwed up a show and not Asduration. So that's.
you're keeping a tally. I love it.
Well, I don't know what episode we're on, but I'm pretty sure I've screwed up every episode except for one, so.
It's real easy to keep track of.
Oh, yeah, because we have a little thing. It says we're on episode 13.
13 episodes.
Yeah.
That's how many.
Alright, so champ rotation. We got Fiora, we got Jax, Jinx, Kha'Zix, Rengu, or Rengar, Quinn, Soraka, Talon, Taric, and Ziggy Ziggs. Your man Ziggs, nice.
Leagues.
Look at that. Alright, so who are we recommending for new players?
New players that are playing support, I'm gonna say Soraka and Taric are both open this week.
Yeah.
They are as easy modes. Well, actually, with the Soraka changes, that kind of changes. Never mind. Because, since the new patch went down as of yesterday,
Yeah.
9/24, I would say if you're new to support, go with Taric because he's really, really easy to learn.
Yeah, he's really straightforward. He's got a stun, he's got scaling armor. It's pretty swag.
Yep.
As always, I'm gonna
I think
recommend
Fiora.
Ziggs.
Fiora's really easy, pretty straightforward. Good top laner, good duelist, pretty strong. See nothing wrong with learning to play Fiora. She lacks escape, but she makes up for it in just sheer
With
damage.
Intense all in.
Yeah. So, she's a good one to pick. What, did Orianna get another freaking splash art update? Oh, it just looks weird. Her face is, more crooked. Anyway, sorry. Off topic. Ziggs. You want to talk about Ziggs. I know you do, Snaggle.
He's well as we have already determined multiple times on the journey to 30. He is the best champion in the game.
Oh,
And,
God.
debatable.
He is. What did you say? Debatable?
I did just say debatable.
Alright, I'm just going to clear this up. Ziggs is a very safe pick, and he affords... Even though he's all skill shots, he affords your team a little bit of reprieve if you get behind, and if you get ahead, I guess, just because he has such great lane control when it comes to controlling minion waves, dealing with sieges at turrets, sieging on turrets, having global map pressure with his ult. He's just a really pain in the ass champion to play against. So for those reasons, I wish more people would pick him up, because it's never a bad thing to have a Ziggs on your team.
Yeah.
Everything that Shira just said is correct. I agree.
And you know, Jinx, I mean, she's looking like the only 80 carry as I'm going through here. So she's not my recommended, but she's definitely got some
Honestly,
strong
a
points.
lot of the free champs this week are not
Yeah.
particularly that easy to play. Like Quinn doesn't
Oh,
really
don't play Quinn.
necessarily have a spot that she fits in great. Rengar is...
Rengu, Kitty
You
Kitty.
really need to know how to play him and really utilize his ferocity to use him effectively. Jax he's going to be a monster by the end of the game as long as you get there, so you have that, but he can be punished early. And then Kha'Zix is really strong right now too, so I could say you could pick him up, but
Kha'Zix is tough though. Like,
yeah.
a lot of new players don't know when to use their
Well,
lead.
he's squishy. He's squishy if you play him out in the jungle too, so
Yeah.
you have to be kind of careful on when to pick fights.
But that's your champ rotation, guys. So take a look. Let us know how you do with those guys. Last week we talked about masteries. My stupid self forgot to upload it onto the YouTube, so the only way you could have seen it is via Twitch. So I'm not expecting you guys to have seen last week's episode unless you actually were there or you watched on Twitch. So I apologize for that. I definitely dropped the ball on that one. But it is up there now, so go ahead, take a look at that. Masteries, it's a good one. I kind of do a lot of it solo, but it's still really good. Got a lot of good feedback from people saying that they like the mastery pages that I presented and just general success, so that's really nice as well. Alright, so let's delve into this jungle, because this is going to be a lot. This is a heavy topic. So for this one, I figure I want to do two parts. I want to do more of an informative one, and then maybe a hands-on one. Like, we go in game next episode, and we kind of like look at some strategies for the jungle. While this one we kind of leave more to, we're gonna just throw information at you, and hope you guys can learn some stuff from it. Does that sound okay?
I like that plan.
Cheer, are you available next week for the hands-on part of it?
As of right now, I'd be happy to tag along.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. First off, what is the jungle? Why do we have a jungle, and why is jungle important in this meta?
Okay, so the jungle is that massive expanse of space on each side of the map that occupies all the room between lanes. So if you're at all within trees or along the map that's not the river and not in a lane, you're most likely in the jungle if you're not at your base. So why is it important to have a jungler? Because it's nice to have somebody who can pop out at any time and surprise someone, or to make sure that somebody on the other team isn't going to pop out at any time and surprise your team.
Yep. Jungle also serves as its own role and lane. So, you know, right now it's really nice to have two solo lanes because they get a massive amount of experience and gold, and that frees up champions to level a little bit faster to get some more gold. It's more effective gold-wise to have a person playing out of the jungle, simply because it benefits everybody evenly, more evenly at least. So that's another reason why junglers are important as well. And jungler right now is kind of the pacemaker. Like, they set the tone for the game.
You control the whole tempo.
Yeah.
So you basically, when you're playing jungle, you get to decide when you're going to go and gank so-and-so lane, or which, can either make your teammates very happy or very sad, depending on if you decide to neglect certain lanes because they're falling behind, or whether you're choosing to, snowball certain lanes ahead, or anything like that. You kind of, you get to play this just hidden thing coming out of the bushes that is there to sort of scare enemy laners from being like too aggressive in certain situations, or to give or relieve pressure for your teammates so that they can more easily win their lane, take control of their lane, or give them some breathing room to just get back on track and sort of even them out when it comes to whether or not they might be behind or not. So playing jungle has a huge role because, again, you control the entire pace of the game, but the other big role is you also get to you're the deciding factor when it comes to taking the neutral objectives on the map that are composed of both buffs, the two on each side, as well as Dragon and Baron, which are also huge gold generators for your team, so you need to have a jungler, especially after you hit 30, or need to understand what a jungler's role is, because it can actually help your team have a huge advantage when it comes farther along in the game, and you've collected a couple dragons and gotten Baron, and you're going for that final push to finish out the game.
Yeah. So you mentioned
Speaking
bugs.
of objectives, we should probably get one thing out of the way quickly. If anyone tells you you don't need to take Smite as a jungler, they're wrong. Tell them they're wrong. Don't listen to them. You don't even have to tell them they're wrong.
Just mute them and then continue on your merry way.
Why are they wrong, though? Like, why are they wrong?
Okay, so Smite is basically you have a button that can execute minions, monsters, whatever you're hitting. So at max level, Smite does 1,000 damage. So when everybody's level 18, true damage.
That's important. It's true damage.
It's just damage that's going to absolutely crush whatever you're hitting. So it comes in really clutch when you get in that situation where you're trying to take Baron and they start to come in on you, and you can, secure that objective for your team, turn around and beat them. Or if the enemy is trying to take Baron, you can jump in the pit, try and steal it, and if you get it, you might have just changed the entire course of the game, though I'm not recommending you necessarily do that at every chance you get, because there are times where doing that is the wrong thing to do. It is an extremely powerful tool when it comes to getting your team ahead and just, again, taking over the map. So it's one of those things where if the enemy jungler, the enemy jungler is at their blue buff and they're on red side and they're taking blue buff, and you're kind of harassing them at blue buff, and they use smite on blue buff because you're around and they're afraid that you're going to smite. As soon as he takes that with smite, you can turn around with your team and take dragon. You have your smite up, they don't. So you have that extra however much true damage to be able to pop in to get the last hit on dragon and secure it for your team. That you can't trade. Having an ignite over that isn't worth it, especially when you're in a role where it helps out your early clear so much, and it helps you to secure buffs, objectives, everything like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a point to note that you may find a champion that you don't feel you need to run Smite with. You still need Smite. Like Fiddlesticks, for example, is an incredibly easy jungler who doesn't really need Smite because while his clear isn't the fastest, he doesn't struggle really at all. And he does.
You'll never leave a camp with less than full health once you have level 3 drain.
But the point is that having that smite clears a little bit faster, and it gives you that versatility and ability to steal or secure objectives, and that's a quintessential part of jungle.
Yeah, just because Nunu has consume doesn't mean you don't need smite. If you take smite, then you have a double smite, and it makes you even stronger.
Yep.
And smite's range, so you can do it from a decent distance away. Yep. You don't need to be necessarily in melee to use it, which is huge.
Alright, so you mentioned buffs along with objectives, and I feel like buffs are kind of one of the biggest I would say goals, but also just kind of primary focuses from a jungler perspective. So let's talk about blue buff and red buff and why they are important to a jungler, and then later on why they're important to not necessarily continue to give to yourself.
Okay, so the nice thing about buffs is they do exactly what we call them. They buff you. They give you, the blue buff gives you a huge amount of CDR and basically makes it so that you have a ton of resource regeneration and mana. So it allows you to continue clearing quickly because you can spam abilities. Say you're playing somebody like Hecarim or Skarner or anybody who's just going to be smashing their Q button to continue doing damage. If you have a blue buff, you don't really need to worry too much about running out of mana, and you can continue your merry way throughout the jungle, clearing camps as fast as you can. And then there's red buff, which, you know, gives you a damage over time on your auto attacks, as well as gives a slight slow upon the application of those auto attacks. So both of those buffs are extremely important, but the other major factor with going into killing those monsters are that they also give you a very large sum of experience.
Yep.
And that experience is enormous, especially when you're trying. It's huge. Most people usually hit level 6 on their second clear of the buff, so they'll take, let's just say they took blue first, then red, and they've cleared the jungle for a bit, gotten a gank off or whatever. You'll usually hit level 6 right around the time that blue spawns next. And a lot of people get it on that blue buff kill. Buffs spawn after a buff camp is completely cleared. They spawn every 5 minutes. So if you go in and invade and you kill all of the minions in a buff camp, so say you kill the big blue golem but you don't kill both little minions, they won't spawn until that last minion is dead, and it will spawn 5 minutes after that last minion is dead. So you can, again, if you can get an invade off, or you go into the enemy jungle and you steal their buff, that can actually put an enemy jungler very behind, because not only do they lose a significant amount of XP, but they also lose a buff that can help them either get to a lane and make a big difference, or it takes away their ability to give away their buffs to their mid laner or their top laner, their AD carry, whoever will benefit from them the most.
Mm-hmm. So, as an avid mid laner, both Snaggle and I, we respect when a jungler decides to give us blue buff, and you'll notice more frequently that the blue buff is the one that's usually given up, not so much the red buff, simply because when a jungler is coming in for a gank, they usually want that bonus slow. So that's really important. So when the blue buff gets handed over to the mid laner, you need to make sure that you thank him for it, because he is giving you a significant portion of his jungle because of that. Like
he is basically
important.
sacrificing his ability to potentially continue ganking at a high level due to resources or experience that could get him ahead to help him be a little bit more effective, for the trade-off that you are going to be able to carry the game harder than he is. So not only should you thank him, but you should do your best to make use of that buff in the best possible way, because he's kind of just given you the burden of needing to carry solely to the fact that he believes that you're going to be able to make a difference with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on that point, if you're getting behind in your lane, you've gotten killed a couple of times. Well, first of all, don't expect that you automatically get the buff. Definitely don't yell at your jungle if he's taking it when you think you should get it. But especially if you're behind, it's not a good idea for the jungler to give that to you. You might think, well, I'm behind, it'll help me catch up. But there's a pretty good chance that you're going to die again if you've already died a couple times. And the thing to remember for new players is if you get killed, those buffs transfer. So it's actually better for the jungler, who's probably doing better than you at that point, to keep those buffs, help out other lanes, while you just try and, turtle and play defensively.
Yeah.
If you die with that buff to the person who's already beating you in lane and they take that buff, they're going to start smashing you even harder, which is going to frustrate you even more. In a situation like that, it's better to just suck it up, deal with the fact that you're behind, do your best to try and keep from getting further behind, while trying to sort of close that gap between you and the opponent in lane without doing anything crazy, and hope that your jungler can utilize that buff somewhere else on the map to get somebody else snowballing.
Yeah, it's those fantastic points. I'm glad that those got covered because those are super important to.
And I also want to bring up, somebody in Twitch chat actually brought up a very good point, that if you are also the jungler and you have double buffs and you're sitting at lower health or half health, I typically don't like to ever gank below 60% health unless I know we're going to get a kill out of something, just because you do not want to go into a lane that you're trying to help die because, say, the person you're going to gank isn't paying attention or something like that, and then you just transferred 2 buffs to the person that you were trying to, shut down on their team, and now they're way more ahead, and they're gonna crush your mid laner or whatever laner you ganked, and not only that, but now your laner has to deal with the ramifications of you going in and basically giving 2 buffs away.
Yep.
Unless you really want to give the other team, a real quick pick-me-up, if you're looking to boost their morale, then go for it. Because that's a real good way of doing it. Hey, they just tried to 3v2 us and we killed them and now we have buffs, so...
Don't do that. Don't do that. Alright, so yeah, buffs, they're pretty important. Getting and securing a buff, especially stealing a buff, can be not only like... You can only see the ramifications of it physically, them manifesting in your ability to just do more, but also there's a psychological aspect of, oh my goodness, I don't have my buff anymore, like I'm gonna play like shit now, or I'm not gonna do as well as I could have before. There's a lot of utility going into stealing a buff or losing a buff, so those things need to be protected, which is why we're gonna talk about warding as a jungler real quick. And then before we talk about like jungle routes and how to gank and those sort of things, because I feel like warding as a jungler is really, really important as well. And you should be the person warding the second most behind the support.
It's really important, and at lower levels it gets neglected a whole lot. In fact, I can say with certainty that if I were to go to a lane and pick up a first blood or assist on a first blood, and I'm going back afterwards, the first thing I pick up is a pink ward.
Yep.
In almost any of those situations, just because with pink wards potentially being able to stay around as long as they're not killed, just having that extra bit of vision anywhere on the map, particularly in your jungle. I love placing a pink ward on the other side of my red buff, or in a river brush that the enemy might not even think to pass through on their way, or may pass through it, but it was so small they didn't notice it was there. I've had pink wards last over 30 minutes. I've had pink wards last an entire game. And this is something for all roles. I really firmly believe that if you don't have a pink ward on the map, you should get one on the map as quickly as possible. Just because, again, having just vision down, providing information to your team through vision is huge. And then beyond pink wards, if, say, the enemy's playing an aggressive counter jungler like Udyr, and you're playing somebody like a Mumu, let's just say that you've already cleared your buffs once, and your blue buff's getting ready to respawn. Their Udyr kind of, if he's jungled a lot, he kind of knows when your buffs are going to respawn too, if you did just an average clear. And let's say you go to gank bot lane. So you go bot lane, and you fail to get a gank off, and you're going back into your jungle. Chances are, if you didn't see Udyr anywhere, and he knows what he's doing, he just went and took your red buff, and there's not really too much you could have done about it, because you were all the way on the other side of the map. Now, if you were to throw a ward, or you had a pink over near that, or you even knew that you were going to be aggressively counter-jungled, you could throw a ward in a bush near a buff in your jungle, and it gives your teammates, the ability to see if somebody's invading their jungle, so A, that person can't steal your buff, or B, they steal your buff and then go to, gank one of your laners from inside your jungle, which is extremely effective. It gives them a little bit of time to decide whether they want to go and harass that person that's potentially taking the buff and make their life miserable. If a jungler is trying to counter jungle you, and your mid laner and top laner can kind of coordinate to go and fight them in the jungle. There's not too much he's going to be able to do against two people if his laners don't follow up. Jungling is such a huge topic, and there's so much versatility when it comes down to it, because it's not like laners where some laners will have a bad matchup or something like that. There are so many different characters that can jungle and that are effective in different things or different places in jungling. Like, you'll have characters like Kha'Zix, who are just great people to invade or get ganks off because they do so much damage if they can get a target isolated. Or a Lee Sin who can pull off some pretty flashy plays and just have a whole lot of early aggression that kind of tapers off into more of a late game tank bonus support utility. But warding in the jungle is, I would say, one of the harder things to get used to doing, but once you start doing it, even if you're not warding your jungle up, but you're warding the enemy jungle up, so you can know what paths they're going, you can give your laners time to figure out, so-and-so is going bot lane to gank, so-and-so is going top to gank. That in itself pays off more than the 75 gold it took to throw one ward down ever could.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely incredible the amount of... just look at it like this. You spent 75 gold to keep the enemy from getting 300. I'd do that 10 times in a match if I knew it was going to save somebody 10 times.
It's really effective.
And on that point, when you talk about having vision in your jungle, just to move to the other lane super quick, like, if your jungler is doing a good job warding and you see the enemy jungler coming in to try and steal a buff, or he engages your jungler, don't ignore that to get that last couple of CS you want to get. Like, collapse immediately and take that son of a bitch out fast. Like, just make sure you're keeping an eye on your mini map so you can help out when you need to.
And I'm really happy you brought that up as well, because there are so many times where, as a jungler, somebody goes in to steal your buff and your laners just don't react at all, or your laners won't react and their laners will, and next thing you know, there's 2 people in your jungle, 3 people in your jungle fighting you off. They get a kill. Not only now are you behind, you don't have your buff, you don't know if they have things warded in your jungle, and if you do get behind, they're going to be able to, like, say the enemy has a top lane Riven or it's a mid lane LeBlanc or something like that. If you're pretty far behind, they can just come in and gib you, and there's nothing you can really do about it if your teammates aren't actively trying to help out. And then they start yelling at you because, you fed whatever or anything like that. If a jungler is behind, it's the team's fault. It isn't necessarily because the jungler did anything too crazy. But if a laner... And this goes for anybody interested in jungling, laning, or anything like that. If the laners aren't reacting to a jungler getting invaded, they are not playing the game correctly, because those laners, if say you were able to go in and defend your buff and get a kill, the assist and kill gold is going to equal out, if not be more than the 3 extra CS you'd potentially get trying to farm under your turret enemy to their turret. Plus, it's shared experience for anybody that was involved in the kill, and it might be just enough to get your jungler ahead to go in and do the exact same thing to the enemy players.
Yeah, all great points. Yeah, totally. So remember to ward. A guy on my 5's team loves warding. Since I main mid in Chalk Call, I ward the bush near Dragon, and he wards the bush near Baron, and it's just a fantastic synergy thing that we got going on.
And if you're jungling and you notice that your laners aren't warded and you have an extra ward, feel free to toss one in a bush near them.
Yeah, help them out.
Just be a a good teammate, and that in itself can pay off dividends later in the game.
Yeah, and it should go without saying that, like, as the jungler, you need to be the most what's the word that I want to look here? Sportsmanlike. You should be the most sportsmanlike person here. Like, your job as a jungler, and we're going to talk about Feral Flare in a minute, and my issues with Feral Flare, but we're going to... you as a jungler, your job, your entire reasoning for being in the jungle is to help your team. And if you're gonna use that ward, say you wanted to use it bot lane, but you're seeing that top lane's getting camped, and you know that jungler's up there frequently, and maybe you need to be somewhere else on the map to you can't help him. Give that guy that ward. Like, just give it to him. Like, don't you can be versatile with it.
The best way to phrase that is a ward sitting in your inventory isn't doing anything to benefit your team.
Thank you, Dom.
Agreed.
You dumb. All right, so let's move on. We talked about warding, and that's good. It's important as a jungler to do that. So, the jungle creeps, in specific. There's three types of camps. You know, you got your wolves, you got your wraiths, and you got your golems. Alongside, you got your buffs. So, specifically, which ones do you think are the most important to grab? You know, what kind of routes do you usually look at?
And the white, but the white.
Oh, and the white. Oh, I'm still thinking back in season.
It's okay. The white's more of a, I would say, late, early, mid game sort of camp anyway. Okay. For new players trying to get in the game, don't try to kill the white too early because that thing hits pretty hard and can really make your life miserable, especially because it has a pretty lengty auto attack, and even when you're running away, it can potentially kill you if you're not paying attention to your health.
If you want a really good way to get your team to yell at you, die from minions real early when you're playing jungle.
Yeah.
After getting both buffs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'm gonna kind of let's see. I'm gonna say that the Wraith camp is probably the easiest to clear out of the four camps that were just mentioned, followed by the wolves, the golems, and then finally the white. And then both the red buff and the blue buff are probably equally as hard, and they are harder than the other four camps.
And this is assuming you don't have smite, because white camp with smite you can take out in like 2 seconds flat.
Yep,
while that's not necessarily true for like wolves or even wraiths. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no smite, just straight camps. That's how it goes.
So you want me to go over typical jungle clear?
Yeah, like and start with first and foremost, follow your AD carry.
Yeah, okay, so say you're blue side and your bot, and your AD carry is just doing the normal AD carry support duo lane bot. You typically want to start the buff that is nearest to your AD carry so that they can help provide a pretty strong leash, and you don't need to blow any health potions too early or anything like that, so you can be healthy for later on your first clear, so you can actually go get an effective early gank off. So, if you are playing on the red side, you'll want to start blue buff. If you're playing on the blue side, you'll typically want to start red buff. And that can be different based on like certain champions that you're playing. So like regardless of what side you're on, if you're playing a Mumu, you're probably going to want to start your blue buff just because he is so mana intensive early that you kind of need that buff rolling and a little bit of that CDR to really pick up your clear speed. So if you're on, let's go with blue side. Let's say you're starting red buff and you're playing, let's go with Vi. Okay, you'll start red buff. Your AD carry should help leash, and typically what people will do is after they clear their buff, they'll get red low, they'll smite it. Some people like to smite right off the bat so they can just kill it. I prefer to execute buffs with smite just to keep myself in the groove of doing it, because I don't want it to be a situation where for some reason they have my early buff warded and nobody's paying attention to the fact that there's somebody sitting in the bush right next to me, and I smote the buff early, and next thing you know, their Udyr just ran out of the jungle with my buff because he kept his and took it.
Yeah. But there is a point to saying that if you know you're not going to get stolen and you want that smite for something else, doing it early is not a bad thing.
Right. So you always want to blow your smite on the first buff. And the reason for this is, since smite has been lowered to 50 seconds compared to what it used to be in the past, you'll take your first buff, and then if you're starting red buff, usually people will go to wraiths, clear that, and then they'll run straight over to their blue buff. If you start blue, you'll take blue buff, kill your wolves, which gives slightly more XP than the wraiths, but it doesn't actually, that small amount of XP doesn't really influence whether or not you'll hit level 3 quickly, but it is it is worth saying that wolves do give slightly more XP. Um, so if you're starting blue buff, you'll kill your buff. The blue buff, you'll smite it. You'll go and take wolves, and then you'll run over to your red buff, and your smite will be up for that as well. Um, and then what you can do is you can go back to your. You'll go from blue to wolves to red to wraiths, and then you can go back to wolves because they'll have respawned by now, and you can kill them if there's not a good gank opportunity. Or if you kill wraiths and say their mid laners pushed up really far, their top laners really pushed up, you can go and clear that. If you're on bottom side and you start red, you'll go red, you'll kill your wraiths, you'll go to blue buff, you'll kill that. Using smite on both, and then you'll go and take your wolves, and you can go and see if there's a gank possible top, gank possible mid. If there's not, you can go take your wraiths and make something happen bottom lane.
Yeah.
That's just like kind of the most basic clear possible. There are some people who like to kill their blue buff and then or they'll kill their red buff and then go straight to wolves and then blue. But I prefer if I'm doing I prefer the first general clear just because I like having the opportunity to be able to go and clear that fourth camp if there isn't a lane that is like ripe for a gank opportunity. And gank opportunities aren't always there, so it's that's kind of the safe way to do an early first clear. And those clear speeds are dependent on the champion that you pick, the abilities that you pick on those champions, and it's much harder for certain characters to clear early than it is others.
Yep. Too true.
It's probably good to, when you're learning jungle, make sure you've got your plan in mind before you get into the game. Don't jump in and go, okay, now where am I going to start?
Mm-hmm.
You have less to worry about if you've got that plan beforehand. And then once you get good in the jungle, you can change it up a little bit, maybe gank a bit earlier, but really get that first clear down so that that's just, muscle memory almost. You've got that under your belt.
I want to go into a worst possible scenario for your first clear too. Let's say the enemy team all decides to invade you on whatever buff of your choosing you're going to start with, and you know they're there, and you only have 3 teammates there, and you're not going to be able to fight them off 3v5. In a situation like that, you can have somebody try and keep vision of them. You can ward it to make sure that they're going to be there with the vision. Vision's very important. Again, if your support has, you can, if you took a trinket ward early, which most junglers do, it's pretty safe to try and get a ward on that, so you can see if they actually decide whether or not they're gonna for sure steal your buff. And if they do and you have time, you can go across the map and try and steal their buff so that you're not like there's no real net loss. But if you can't do any of that, you just kind of need to accept that you're going to be behind in that sort of situation and go to the buff that they're not on and kill that and try to do as normal of a clear as possible. And just keep in mind that if you got into a situation where you went to gank and somebody goes to counter gank you and it's a 2-on-2, the enemy jungler is going to be slightly ahead, so it's not really it's not the best situation to be in. But there are some things that are just out of your control in games, and you just need to be ready sort of for any situation. Like the jungle is interesting in that it's one of the most versatile positions there is, and there are so many things that can go wrong, but there's a ton of things that can go right. It's just it's hard to even know what to do in each situation until you've been in those situations numerous times.
Yeah. So we're gonna try and give you some like a semi-easy game plan. To help you out, like for your first times going into jungle. Remember that as your job as a jungler, you're trying to help out your team in the most effective way possible without wasting time, without wasting resources, without wasting all of these different things. It's a concept, and it's important. So specifically with jungle, if you can't find a gank, then don't try and force one. And this is really important. This is incredibly important. Just because someone's saying, oh, like you can gank my lane, he's low, but they're pushed up and there's a risk of you diving and possibly dying, they're like, no, just don't. And this is something for new players to know specifically. Like, for veteran players, you can maybe play something fancy and get, like, a kill out of it and do something crazy. But new players, you're not going to know how to juggle a turret. You're not going to know how to get in and out of something or ward hop or anything like that. So don't try and do something that you're not actually capable of doing. So when we say, go in with a plan, specifically looking to maximize your effectiveness. This meaning, if you can't gank, farm. If you see a gank, go for it, but make sure that you are confident in what you're about to do.
And on the same note as that, if there is a gank that's possible, but your ally is stuck at a turret and there's a massive minion wave there, don't force that either, because if they just neglect that wave to go and chase down a kill opportunity and you don't make that kill happen, he just lost out on a ton of money and a ton of experience that he would have gotten otherwise. So it's fine to show up to relieve pressure to make it easier for him to continue to farm under turret, but you don't necessarily want to go all in on somebody if you're not going to have team follow-up, and you don't necessarily want that team follow-up to be forced, because you can actually get your laners more behind by doing that. So again, jungling comes down to being able to read situations.
Yeah, and don't waste a ton of time sitting in a bush waiting for a gank opportunity to open up. The more time you spend in there, you're losing farm that you should be getting from your jungle. You're losing it on experience. I mean, you might be getting some from the lane, but you're also leeching that from the laner. So, spend a few seconds in a bush if you think there is a possibility to get a gank in, but don't wait there for like a minute thinking, okay, well, after this next wave pushes, then I can get him, because you're just wasting time.
And if that bush that you're waiting in happens to be warded, that laner may want to keep you there, because as long as they know where you're at, they don't need to be afraid of where you potentially could be. They know exactly where you're at, and you don't know where their jungler's at. Their jungler could be on the other side of the map making a play and actually getting something out of that play, while their top laner is just sitting there kind of goading you to come out, but also looking like he's oblivious so that he's keeping you there as long as possible.
Yeah. All right, so go in with a plan, make sure you stick to that plan, whatever you choose to do, buff, camp, buff, gank, buff, whatever you choose to do, just make sure you're sticking with that. You're cutting your losses. If you get your buff stolen, don't try and force something that you can't make happen. Don't try and act on a negative reaction to something, like they just stole your buff and you want to chase down the Udyr. Good luck, you're not going to catch them. So just cut your loss and leave it at that.
And if you've been clearing your stuff out and there aren't any ganks available, and your teammates are able to shove the enemy laners up against their lanes, feel free to go in and make the enemy jungler's life hell in their jungle. Any second that you spend kind of ruining the enemy jungler's clear, or keeping the enemy jungler from doing something towards your team, is just pressure relieved from your team. So it can be really, really helpful to scare the heck out of their jungler, to make their jungler kind of less scary themselves, and make him sort of think twice before he goes somewhere, because he knows you might be around.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about ganking. The bread and butter, the finesse of a jungler is how effective of a ganker he is, and what he does for his team. So real quick, there's a couple, like, you can gank any lane. Yes, you can gank any lane. That being said, there are lanes that you want to prioritize over others, simply because they're either closer, the cost, the effectiveness of actually ganking that lane is higher, the chance of you getting an actual kill is, higher, you're closer to dragon. There's a lot of reasons why you're going to want to be ganking two lanes in particular, but I would honestly say more often than not one lane in particular over all the other lanes, and there's a lot of reasons. Go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so let's talk about ganking lanes and certain champions' strengths in ganking lanes.
Well, I just want to, like, I don't know, maybe not like the champion strength part.
Okay.
But definitely like why we prioritize
All right, so there there's three lanes you can possibly gank. There's top, mid, and bottom lane. Currently, right now, we're seeing a lot of effectiveness in being and getting successful ganks off bottom, simply due to the fact that now with support changes how they've been this season, and the fact that supports are actually making a decent amount of money. And if you have somebody like a Leona support who has powerful all-in engage and is going to be able to actually convert that money to being tankier or anything like that. It's oftentimes better off to try and get a lane of two people fed rather than a lane of one person. Um, the only drawback is that the bottom lane happens to be more warded usually than any other lane on the map. Um, and then there's always the mid lane, which the mid lane in its own sense kind of gets to control when the game moves from the early game to the mid game, because if you can get an early turret in mid, you immediately just got at least some form of influence in the enemy jungle, just because now their mid lane and their jungler don't have like a central point to retreat to if you go to invade or in any situation like that. So this season, I would like to say that like focusing ganks on mid and bottom are typically you get more out of it if you can actually make something happen in those lanes. Now, in the past, most ganks were coming into the top lane and the mid lane, and that's just because single players in the past, based on game mechanics, were able to carry the game much harder than they currently can now. Um, that being said, if you have a Riven top and she's starting, like she's going even, and you being the difference between her being able to completely beat out the other person in lane, and you can go up there and make a difference, and then she hits 6 and gets ahead and can 1v1 the enemy laner whenever she wants, that is worth it in itself too, because then you have a potentially unstoppable top laner that's going to be either powerful enough to split push and deal with however many people they decide to send against her, or it helps her power out when it comes to fights at Dragon or other objectives. The thing with ganking mid and bottom, though, as well, is that it affords you a little bit of extra access to Dragon. So let's say you made a gank happen bot lane. So again, you're getting two people, more experience, more gold from kills or assists. You can immediately turn that around and go take a Dragon, because now the 3 or 4 people that would potentially be able to show up to Dragon, unless a top laner has teleport, they're not going to be able to react in force like your team would be, and you can take the Dragon with 3 or 4 people, no problem. Or if you're ahead enough, and depending on what champion you are, you can take Dragon very easily with just you and the support, allowing your mid laner and your AD carry to continue farming.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of was really inconspicuous about that whole thing.
That's fine.
I was talking about mid lane in particular because of the shortness of the lane, the different areas that you can come from to like successfully kill the person.
And a nice thing about mid lane too is, and this is just something I've had from personal experience playing a lot of mid lane and from experience ganking mid lane. A mid laner typically only wards one side of the mid lane. And the only time they usually ward both sides is either they're really afraid or they've been ganked a whole lot. So if you are going to gank that lane and they immediately react the moment you show up in a bush and start to run away, you know that they have that warded. At the same time, if you know when an area is warded, you should know where to go to make it so they can't see you the next time you come to lane. So you can try going in on the other side of the map, and let's say they do the same thing and they're warded there as well. Well, you can try and go another route through the enemy jungle so you can show up, or at least like come in from their wraith camp onto them. It's sort of a long distance gank, but it can be extremely effective, because not only do they think that they're safe since they have 2 wards up and they would have expected you to be there, but it gives them very, very little time to instantaneously react, especially if your mid laner is coordinated enough to follow up the moment that you go in. And the nice thing is, if you can pick up a kill on mid lane really early and your team's strong enough and the enemy res timers aren't short enough, you can take down that mid turret early, giving your team the extra gold, and again, affording your team easier availability to go in and ward the enemy jungle so you can give yourself vision, or to go into the enemy jungle whenever you want. It's not uncommon, and this is actually, for anybody that follows the LCS, one of the major reasons why the famous SKT T1 player Faker is so good is because he gets so much jungle pressure in mid lane that he can go and make flashy plays all over the map whenever he wants to. And when he's becoming just a jungle invade buddy with Bangi, he was able to go in and kind of assert his dominance not only on the mid laner but also on the jungler, which picks him up even more kills and allows him to snowball even harder.
Yeah, I like your point about coming in from the enemy wraith side. Normally, when I'm playing mid, I like between my trinket and buying another ward to have both sides covered, because I'm terrified of getting ganked. But even with that vision, there's been games where the jungler has come in from that lane behind me, and you're still screwed. Like, you can't get to your tower because he's in between you, and their mid laner reacts, and you're done. So that's if that mid is being real good about keeping those areas covered, you often can still get him if you get a little sneakier.
Yeah. It's not going to be super cut or dry to know which lane to gank, and that's kind of, especially as, you know, a newer player playing with other new players, people may try and pressure you into ganking a lane that you just don't see the potential for. Just take your better judgment with it and do what you feel like is best, and follow your intuition and your intuitive and what you've learned, and make sure that you ground yourself on that. Like, don't, like we say this a lot, but don't force anything. Like, just don't. You're gonna risk yourself putting yourself in a bad spot. You're gonna risk yourself dying or missing something. Like, there's a lot of potential for failure when you push yourself to do something that you don't know you're capable of doing. So, as of right now, I think we could all agree on saying that ganking the top lane is, if you're playing the meta 1-1-2-1, ganking the top lane is the least effective place to gank.
It's typically the easiest place to make something happen just because the lane is so long if the enemy laner isn't paying attention, but it pays off the least in over the course of the game. So, like, again, I would rank it in order of most effective to help snowball your team to victory, getting ganks off bottom, then mid, then top. Not to say that, like, if you can't make anything happen mid or bottom that you're going to fail and you're a bad jungler or anything like that. There might just not be the opportunity available, and maybe top's the only thing you can gank. But in the current state of the game, getting those kills, especially if you can get a double in bottom lane and you can get your AD carry ahead with all the AD itemization changes and everything else. And we're also in a state of the game where an AD carry needs to kind of get much further into the game to become that just one-man show, as long as they have the peels or anything like that to be able to decimate the entire enemy team. Getting them early kills helps speed up your AD carry's power spike to be able to win team fights on a whim.
Yeah, so it's really important to make sure you're prioritizing your carries, specifically your AD carry, because, like Jira said, your AD carry fed is a really valuable tool.
I challenge your friends. Best piece of advice would be always ward for the players on your team that are going to be able to carry the hardest, and always try to get them the most fed, regardless of your position in the game. So it's one of those things. If you have a Maokai top, yeah, it'd be great to go in and gank for Maokai, especially because you can make ganks happen. But having your Maokai uber fed, he's going to be useful regardless if he's behind, ahead, he's up 100 CS, he's down 20 CS. That champion's just really solid, and he's not necessarily going to 1v5 the enemy team. If you have a Tristan on your team and you can get her like a couple early kills, she's going to be a nightmare for the enemy team to deal with. And again, let's just keep Maokai in the picture. Even if he's behind, as long as he's not crazy upset and AFKing or raging out, he's going to be able to go in and keep people off that fed person, or even go in and just create enough havoc for the fed people to be able to kind of sit on the fences and just crush people from afar.
Yeah. All right. So that's kind of
And just real quick, like other laners, keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong with if you feel like you're getting behind to maybe ask your jungler, like if you get a second, you can help out up top. That would be great. But if they just remember, if they have a Tristana bot, or that they're getting that carry even further ahead, let them do their thing, and definitely don't yell at your jungler if you're losing your lane.
Don't expect your jungler to win your lane for you.
Yeah.
And if you're losing because their jungler keeps showing up and yours doesn't, that isn't your jungler's fault. That's your fault for not paying attention to, or it's either your fault for not paying attention to the wards that you have, or that you're not warded, or that you're putting yourself and positioning yourself in bad spots that allow them to be able to continuously get kills on you. It isn't your jungler's goal to win your lane. It's your jungler's goal to snowball your team to victory.
Yeah, definitely a common misconception from people when they see enemy junglers getting super fed off of assists or whatnot is, blame the jungler. So as a jungler, you're going to realize that this is kind of something that happens really frequently. People are going to want to blame you, and hard. Just, you got to take it with stride and just kind of, brush
jungling
it
is the
off.
most blamed role in the game, and it has been since I've played in Season 1, so...
Yeah, it's been that way forever.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah, but you need to also know that a good jungler, by far, some of the best, most well-known people that play in the game are junglers, and they are the people that make a team. They're the people that set the pace. They're the people that do everything for your team. Like, anything that you thought was possible, they're the ones that are going to set you up for that.
They facilitate wins.
Yeah, by far. So, don't be too afraid of the role. We want you to make sure that you're playing the role that you feel like suits your personality. We've said that from the very beginning when we started talking about it. If you're the type of person that's a go-getter, I want to make sure my team wins, and I want to do everything I possibly can to carries to the point where they can do anything. Go jungle. Don't be afraid of it.
Pick what's fun. Don't do anything if you hate doing it. So just play something that you enjoy. I really like jungling because when you're doing well in the jungle, you feel like you just have this great sense of game sense, and you feel like it's almost like you feel like a really good chess player, and that you kind of get to go around and like mastermind certain things that happen on the map. So I like the strategy behind it, and that's one of the big draws for me personally.
Yeah.
Also, jungle's good if you really suck at last hitting, because you don't have to worry.
That's true. There are a lot of junglers who will even talk about how bad they are at last hitting, and that's why they got into jungling. So you don't need to be good at last hitting minions, but you do need to be good at last hitting objectives with smite.
That's why Wrecker jungles. For those of you who don't know who Wrecker N is, that's why he jungles. He sucks at last hitting. Okay, so I want to talk about Feral Flare, but I also and the jungle items in specific, because I feel like they need to be mentioned. I don't want to talk too heavy on them because I don't want to waste time on itemization when I feel like itemization is champion dependent, not necessarily role dependent.
Right.
So I do want to touch on Feral Flare though, and my animosity towards it.
Okay, go ahead.
At the,
All right, so
soapbox?
yeah, so everybody knows my common soapbox. You've heard my Ruby Sightstone soapbox, and you've heard my soapboxes. When you're learning how to jungle, please, for the love of God, don't build Feral Flare. When you're learning how to jungle, don't build Feral Flare, because it teaches you all the wrong things about jungling.
It's a bad habit machine.
It's not a bad item. It teaches you the wrong thing. So make sure that you're not like... I don't want you to quote me and say, oh, Azrishan told me not to build Feral Flare because it's a crappy item or it's not useful. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it promotes isolation, and it doesn't help your team.
Play.
Yeah, and that can be a thing in and of itself. On specific champions, a Feral Flare is incredibly terrifying, like fucking scary. guaranteed. And hands down, I will not debate that. But when you're learning how to play the game, when you have an item that tells you to go farm in your jungle and ignore other lanes so that you can get this item to be stronger, that completely turns off new junglers from the idea of helping their team, just completely. And that's not a
Which
good.
is funny.
That's not a good
It's
habit.
extremely funny because there's still a huge perception with if I build a feral flare, I need to farm the whole time because that's the most efficient way to get stacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you still get stacks with ganking, and ganking helps your team out. So
so
like, there's a huge trade-off, and I think there just needs to be kind of a perception shift towards the utilization of feral flare. But yeah, again, I wouldn't use that as a starter item just because it promotes so many bad habits, and if you're somebody who doesn't like being raged at or doesn't necessarily or you rage too much, don't buy it and expect to go into the jungle, farm for 30 minutes, come out, and the map is just burning to the ground on your side because you didn't show up anywhere ever or control anything, period. But you have 60 feral flare stacks and you feel like a god in a 1v1 situation. What does that matter if you lose the game? You literally just wasted 30 to 40 minutes of your own time by playing very selfish. Not to mention the time of your teammates who've been sitting there trying to pick up the pieces of their lanes as they fall around them to just coordinated pressure.
It's hilarious. It really is. And so for those of you who don't know what feral flare is, I'm almost hesitant to tell you because it's such a awkward item. But you gain stacks on your flare when you kill a big jungle minion, scaling up to 30, and then when you hit 30, it turns into feral flare, which then thereafter acquires stacks that deals bonus damage on hit, which you can see the appeal to it for someone that likes to farm in the jungle.
And you also get stacks for kills and assists.
Yeah, but that's only once feral flare is built. You do not get stacks towards feral flare unless they're jungle camps, which is the dumbest thing in the world. Like, if they had changed it to, you can use this, if you gank a lane and you get a kill and you get a feral flare stack, then that would be awesome. Like, towards feral flare. That'd be cool. Like, I could actually see the possibility of that. But the fact that it's only big jungle camp minions, like, that's where it draws the line to being a selfish item. So, yeah, that's the item. Please don't build it. Just, please don't. Like, you'll learn niche times where you feel like, okay, I can get away with building this item. Then that just comes with experience. But from somebody that's played, both Chir and I have been playing since Season 1, so that's pushing 5 years now. I mean, Snaggle's been playing for 2 years, so we are well aware.
You get stacks from kills and assists once you have a Wriggles Lantern, but you don't get any stacks until you get that Wriggles. And the Wriggles transforms in the flare at 30 stacks.
I'm going to look it up.
Just did.
Did they change it?
Automatically transforms, and it's been this way for a little while, but even still, most people will buy the pieces of Wriggles. If I'm going to build a Feral Flare, I'll typically get the Madreds, and I'll sit on it as long as possible while I get other items. And then, just because if I'm farming whatever, I still like to go gank and all that stuff, but the Wriggles, it does not convert any kills or assists into stacks until you have a Wriggles Lantern.
Okay, well, still don't buy it because it's a stupid item for new players. He's actually right. I just looked it up too. That must have been a more recent change because it used to not even be kills or assists. It used to be only minions or only camps.
Well, they did this in part a little while ago to make it more, I guess, to give incentive for going out and ganking after you buy a Feral Flare because it was promoting such bad-mannered play. But even still, again, this is what I'm talking about, that perception. Most people that play it with a Feral Flare will continue to just farm out as long as they can.
Yeah.
Their Feral Flare is really effective on a lot of just really AD carry melee-esque kind of junglers. So if you're playing a carry jungler like Master Yi, Rengar, or Trinity or something like that, it's very good on those kind of characters. But at the same time, the majority of people who play those roles will, again, just farm up because again they're being selfish, but I love ganking when I have a feral flare, or not even a feral flare, but the wriggles portion of it on those characters. Because if I am getting kills like that early, I'm getting a ton of gold I can spend on other shit. I'm going to be scarier anyway, you know? And then anybody on the map's going to be afraid to run into me. So don't. I would never start with a feral flare, and if I'm going to be learning jungle, I wouldn't even start playing carry jungles just because, again, that just promotes a very selfish sort of play style. It's fine to, want to jungle Yi or Trinity or characters like that, and it can be extremely fun, but from like a team standpoint, those aren't necessarily the best characters to pick because it really pigeonholes the choices your other teammates make when it comes to their champion choice for a lane.
Yeah. So spirit items are the other jungle items. Those are pretty much your best friends. We can't really tell you which one you should buy in the game. That's kind of something you gotta just kind of analyze and look at. But I mean, for the general most part, like each item corresponds to, is it a tanky item? Is it a attack damage item? Or is it an AP item? And
Characters that have a lot of AD scaling, like Bai, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, are almost pseudo assassins in a way. They'll pick up an Elder Lizard.
Yeah.
Spirit of the Spectral Wraith is still kind of lackluster compared to Elder Lizard and Ancient Golem.
Which is ironic.
Yeah, I know.
But we totally called that, you and I. We were like,
Yep.
As soon as this thing's going to drop, like, Spirit of the Ancient Golem used to be a really bad item. And
well, it was it was the best out of the three, and then they nerfed it, and now it's, like, tied with with Elder Lizard.
Yeah.
And you build Ancient Golem on anybody that gets any benefit out of health. So if you're playing somebody tanky, like let's just go Maokai, Sejuani, any characters that get a benefit out of tankiness, Elise, it's really good on all those characters.
Yeah. And itemization, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to itemization. Like, you're not really... A lot of junglers will get like brutalizers if you're an AD jungler looking to get like a Black Cleaver or Yumumus, just because it generally helps you with ganks and team fighting. But there's no real like sacred special item for junglers, and not like mid laners or AD carries where you have your Death Cap or your Infinity Edge.
Infinity Edge, yeah.
But a lot of the itemization is just going to be champion dependent, and we'll go more into that.
It's situation dependent
too.
too.
Absolutely. So we'll go more into that. We're not going to touch too much on itemization just because it's kind of a finicky hit or miss.
It's super reliant on who you're playing, and it's super reliant based on the enemy team composition or anything like that. So that comes from experience, knowing what to build in those situations.
Yeah. So, I mean, build what you think that you want to build. Recommended builds are... Riot's gotten really good at making sure that the recommended builds
They're much better now.
Yeah,
in fact,
standard.
Ghostcrawler mentioned on our podcast yesterday that the recommended builds, after they posted the new ones, had actually raised champion win percentages by a significant amount on certain champions. So
that's really cool. So, and even team fighting, like talking about team fighting as a jungler, is also really dependent on who you're playing. So it's no different than if you're playing top lane or even like mid lane or anyone in specific. It's just depending on who you're playing as a champion. So when you're playing as a jungler and you're looking and you guys are grouped and finally with each other, I think the biggest thing I can say is if you think that an objective can be secured afterwards, meaning Baron or Dragon, do your best not to die.
Mm-hmm.
So,
don't die.
Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest thing when it comes to team fighting. As
Rule
somebody,
1 in League of Legends: try not to die.
You shouldn't die in general,
die.
but as a jungler specifically, with a Dragon or a Baron up, like 30 minutes into the game, if you go down, that objective's gone because there's no smite left. So you need to understand.
Yeah, you'll see that frequently if you watch the LCS. If they're dancing around Baron or Dragon and they take out the jungler, the team that just lost their jungler, they pretty much leave because they know that
they're not going to get it.
Very low chance they're getting it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in a team fight, just try not to die. You may end up dying, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But Yeah, so you take it in stride and do what you would with your champion where you're playing back in, your level 10s where you're playing as Malphite and your duo top with the Annie. Just, you want to go in and you want to smash somebody with your ult. It's not going to change when you're in the jungle. You're going to go in and you're going to smash someone with your ult. So, same premise. Nothing special about jungle team fight. But there is something special about team fighting around Baron and Dragon. And this is where it becomes really finicky, because I see far too frequently junglers leaving an objective to help out the team to kill maybe one, maybe two people, and not the entire team. So, we've talked about objective control before pretty extensively, and talked about as a jungler, or as a mid laner, where should you be when you're taking Dragon? As an AD carry, where should you be as you're taking Dragon? For a jungler, I think my best advice for you when you're taking Dragon or Baron, you by far, guaranteed should be on the objective. More so than anybody else. Because you need to be close for that smite, you need to be ready, you need to be monitoring its health, and you need to be, you have the bonus damage to monsters because you have the Elder Lizard, you have everything in your kit ready to kill that guy. That dragon. So you need to be next to him. And if you see the enemy Orianna or someone wandering outside, that is not your goal to go after that person. Your goal is to stick on that dragon and make sure he dies to you and not somebody else. And this is really important, like incredibly important, because this translates in when you hit 30 significantly to your job. Your biggest job when it comes to the mid to late game is your ability to secure major objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're on that. All right. What else we got? Play who you want. We see damage versus tanky and when it's appropriate. Obviously, you want to play to the strengths of your team.
Though statistically, as we've mentioned on the Trinity Force podcast, and according to all the math that I believe it was, what was that site, LoL Builder, whatever it was, they did a bunch of math showing that the more tanks you have on the team, the more realistically your chances at winning are. So you can keep that in mind, and that teams with fighters and AD carries had lower win rates than more than one fighter or AD carry had lower win rates than almost any other composition. But tanks just again have so much initiating power. I always love tanks.
And the thing is, you mentioned before about if you are planning to carry, you better make sure you carry when you're talking about mid lane. But that applies to jungle too. Like if you're playing a tanky jungler like a Rammus, even if you maybe get a little behind or you don't do super well, you're still being effective as a damage soak. You still can build defensively, and you're still going to help your team. If you jungle Yi and you get dunked on, come late game, you're not doing any damage. You're going to be useless. So
I was about to say a 0-6 Yi is not nearly as wanted in a team fight as like a 0-6 Malphite or somebody like that.
A 0-6 Yi is not. You're not even on your team anymore. You're on the enemy team.
Yep.
You're not helping. So, like, when in doubt, you really can't go wrong playing what you can. But it's pretty safe bet that if you play a tanky jungler, you're going to be a pretty good help to your team.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got to wrap this up because I really need to do homework, and
Gotcha.
we knew that this was going to be a long one. So, real quick, we're going to go over some junglers we feel like you guys will find the most success with and the easiest to learn. Do note that we've been playing this a while, so if you find that they're really tough, oh my goodness, we do need to note that runes are incredibly important and masteries are incredibly important. So please, for the love of God, look up a proper rune page. We haven't touched on runes here on Journey to 30, but if you're planning to play jungle, look up a proper rune page and make sure that you're prioritizing armor and defensive.
Runes and masteries make your first clear so much easier than almost anything else possibly could.
they can honestly make or break how well you do in your in the game. Like, this is one of the reasons why you can't just jungle Annie as soon as you get your player. Like, I tried that. It didn't work, and I've been playing the game for 5 years. Jungle Annie with no runes and masteries still doesn't work, and you could be a veteran. It just doesn't matter. Like, you need your runes, you need your masteries, and those are huge. Especially runes, because as, again, the Trinity Force podcast always says, runes help early game, masteries help throughout the entire course of the game. So set yourself up to succeed. Don't be a hindrance on your team. But anyway, champions we want to recommend for new people learning how to play the game.
Alright, the 3 easiest, in my opinion, are Warwick, because he's always really easy, and he might not be the fastest jungle clear, but he's incredibly safe, and he typically doesn't walk out of the jungle with anything less than full health because of his Q. Second, Skarner, because he's really, really, really easy to just clear, and he is tanky, and he has a great ult that is a pain in the ass for an enemy team to deal with. He's just, even if he's ahead or behind, he is still doing his job as a damage soak, and he provides nice, baked-in damage into his kit. And who did I have as a third one?
You get 3. Snaggle gets 3, I get 3.
Amumu, just because he's a monster in lower elos, and even though he's extremely blue dependent, and that can be an issue if you get invaded, there are also a few champions that can press one button and land it into a group of people, and then instantly press a button that is basically like, hey team, come and attack all the people that I just stunned.
Yeah. Alright, those are your 3. Snaggle, what you got?
I mentioned him already, but I really like Remus. He moves fast through that jungle with his Q. He's tanky. And when you get hit with that fully leveled taunt, it feels like you are there forever. And he's also good at taking down turrets with his ult. What was the other one? Nasus. I like Nasus. It's really easy to farm your Q when you don't have to worry about anybody else in your lane. And he's also tanky. And also Volibear. He's another character who's fast, running through the jungle. He's got a pretty good clear. And he's got some CC too. So yeah, those are the 3 I like.
I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive with mine. I'm going to say Fiddlesticks. I really like Fiddlesticks, and he's kind of different than your standard either bruiser jungler or your standard tank jungler.
He's like the only AP pick we have other than Remus.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue Diana back in the day, but not so much anymore. Awesome thing about Fiddlesticks, if you are clever and you have the ward coverage, you can take Dragon completely by yourself at level 4 after you get your second blue buff. I've done it, and I do it all the time as Fiddlesticks. All you got to do is get your Spirit Stone, and that's it. Once you have Spirit Stone and you get blue buff, you can take it by yourself. Just max your drain and go to town. It's going to take forever, but you'll get it, I promise. Another one of my favorites, and he's just incredibly successful. He has his own championship skin. Jarvan, J4, really strong.
Jarvan is my 4th pick. He's such a freaking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
He can engage from a bunch of different angles, which makes him so good.
Yep. He's really strong, really fun. Just note that his ult is incredibly annoying, and sometimes you can be like, I'm helping, I'm Jarvan, and then other times you're like, I'm helping, I'm Jarvan. Like, don't trap your AD carry in your ult. It's a big no-no. And then last one is someone that I've tried for so long to be good at, but he's just the one champion. Like, he is like Dom Zyra. He's my character that I just, for some reason, I just can't like win with him, and that's Kha'Zix.
Okay.
He is incredibly strong and ganks like a mother. He will carry hard. But I don't know what it is. Just for some reason, I practice and practice and practice and put so much time and effort into learning and getting good at him. And sometimes I'll have good games, and then other times I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm not doing it right, obviously. So Kha'Zix, he's good. He's fun.
So, if I'm to understand this correctly, the advice you're giving these new jungle players, as someone who's played for 5 years and hasn't figured Kha'Zix out,
Is to play Kha'Zix.
Yes, actually, he's incredibly strong.
This is what you're saying.
Hey,
This is what I'm
fun
saying.
Factor, I guess.
Dom promotes Zyra, even though he sucks at Zyra. Like, I totally he's not a difficult champion to get to know by any means. Like, he's really straightforward, and he may seem a little, like, overbearing at first with his evolutions, but it's really, he's straightforward and easy, and I just don't know why I can't play him really well. I really don't. Like, any other champion I could jungle with.
I understand.
Shit. I've jungled Janna. Morgana.
For people who are just starting to jungle for the first time or something like that, I will say you should probably go with tanky initiators until you have a feel for it, just because, again, when you're playing those kind of characters, even if you're not able to get fed or you're behind or something like that, you can still provide some sort of utility or at least a damage soak for your team.
Yeah.
Until you learn what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And then you can learn how to carry out of the jungle. It's funny that we didn't say Udyr.
I have reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I have reasons too why he wasn't in my top 3. But
don't get me wrong, I love Udyr. He's one of my favorite characters, but I definitely have reasons for not recommending him to newer players, and that's just...
He's just so staple in the jungle community as a really good jungler. So
he's a solid jungler. He's a great counter jungler. If you're able to pay attention to where enemies are warding, he can have very strong ganks. But he's also a character that if you have issues getting into gank, you might fall behind because he's extremely powerful early game. And if you're not going for that, and you're going for the feral flare mentality, again, you're playing a champion that you're just using to farm in one spot, and that can be just, again, bad-mannered play or selfish play that I would prefer new players not get into the habit of doing.
Yeah, it's something we're trying to promote
Also
here
for-
at Journey 30.
Also for new players, it might be tricky for them to figure out the stances and when to use them and how to spin stances.
You're so quiet. I
Yeah,
can't.
you got really quiet on that one.
Sorry.
It's okay. We still love you.
I'll yell for the rest of the 5 minutes we've got.
You've gotten progressively quiet, more quiet over the stream. I think your mic's going out, man.
I'm just getting more shy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Takes you yelling though, which is weird. So the reason I didn't say Sejuani was because Amumu does everything Sejuani does, like 3 times better. So if you want to play someone like Sejuani, just play Amumu. God, I love Sejuani, don't get me wrong, just Amumu is just better at everything. Alright, why pick this role? I mean, we kind of went over that, why we feel like you guys should pick this role. It's fun.
It's fun. It has
really fun.
tremendous ability to control a game. Again, you kind of get to dictate everything that happens. You can call for dragons, you can call for barons, and you are kind of the de facto person necessary to make those successful. So you take a lot of responsibility in being a jungler, and jungling is kind of in the same vein as support in that it can be a really thankless job, and you can get blamed for a lot of stuff. But if there are games where you'll walk out and you wouldn't, nobody will tell you did a great job, but you'll know that if it wasn't for you playing that character in that role, your team would not have won that game.
Yeah.
And that in itself is enough to keep me playing in a jungling capacity. It's awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Not enough appreciation goes to junglers. Not enough appreciation goes to people that just play well, I think, in general, which is a little disappointing, but it is what it is. All right, so here we're kind of at a loss. We're next week we're going to be talking more about jungle. We're going to go more into some in-depth kind of play. We're going to look at the map and look at what you should be doing around the map. And going into it, we want you to have the idea of this isn't just for this champion. This is what you should be kind of generally doing in general. I just said generally like 6 times, but I want to give you guys an idea of the jungle, not so much as, or we want to give you an idea of the jungle, not so much as champion based, but in general, because when it comes down to it, you're going to look at the jungle as an area, and with any area and with any lane, it comes their strengths, its weaknesses, its jobs, and that's what you guys need to learn first and foremost, before anything else, before how to play a champion in the jungle or anything like that. You need to know how to play the area. So that's what we're going to talk about most next week. But after that, we're kind of sort of at a loss not at a loss of what to do. We have some ideas, but if anyone in particular has something that they want us to do, we are welcome to.
Or they just want to know more about.
Yeah. We are welcome
to
to.
Just yell at Asteration for an hour. Let us know, because I can do that.
Yeah, which is fine too. You can all get on Skype and just yell at me and tell I'm an awful person. It'll be great. I kind
hate him so much.
I feel like I have to justify Jarvan now, because...
Don't worry about it. It is what it is. I like Jarvan because he's a terror against new players as well. He can be a huge pub stomper, but he doesn't really lose any of that effectiveness as people go up in skill level with him. Just because if you're building tanky with him off the bat, again, you're still a monster, and if you're very comfortable at him, once you learn how to play him, you can start building more damage and then carry your team in the early game. So, again, there's trade-offs with every champion you pick. And you can screw up a lot of things with Jarvan, and you can miss a lot of things with Jarvan if you can't combo and whatever like that, but at the same time, he can help develop some better habits to, transitioning around the map, going to gank, learning interplay between other champions, and he's a lot of fun too. So
yeah. He's just cool. Like, I like Jarvan. But, so we gave a recommendation.
He was actually the first person I ever jungled on, so I have a place in my heart for him too.
Yeah, he's special to me. Okay, so guys, don't forget to always check out TrinityForcePodcast.com, all of your, important info over there. Also, check out www.youtube.com/Tforce Podcast, where these are always found. I'm sure you're probably listening to it there, but, just in case you didn't know, go look there now. You can also follow us on Twitter. I'm at Asderition.
I am at... I almost said Snaggle. Doc_chicken.
Yeah, if you can't hear, it's because he's got like a toad in his mouth. It's Doc_chicken.
I don't have a toad in my mouth.
They do.
And
I'm at Chirajaeden.
Yeah, just at Chirajaeden. If anyone tweets the most, it's Snaggle and Chira. Of course, I would appreciate if you followed me, just so I can kind of have that pride in knowing that people kind of like me. If you don't like me, then don't worry about it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But I don't tweet nearly as often as these two. I'm trying to. I really am. If you have any questions or info, you need anything, you have a listener question, you have anything that you want to know immediately, well, not immediately. If you have a question, you want us to talk about it on the air, battlearena@TrinityForcePodcast.com. Send them there. It's connected to my Gmail, so I get it instantly. And if I don't respond instantly, it's because I was busy with something. I usually respond pretty quick. I'm working on getting Snaggle the information. I told you, yeah, we'll get it.
Are you actually working on it, or do you just keep saying that?
I keep trying to talk to Pwn, and he just blows me off every time. So eventually I'll get it from him, but working on it.
Also, really quick, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Real quick, I want to mention October 25th, I am doing Extra Life again this year. It is a 24-hour video game marathon in support of sick kids hospitals, and there's a link in the chat. And if you guys could find it in your heart to donate, I would appreciate that so much. I'm going to try and beat my goal of $200 that I got last year. And I am going to be streaming it, so you can watch me deteriorate mentally and physically if you feel like it. And I guarantee it's going to happen, because those last 5 hours, they're real rough. So yeah, that would be awesome. Any help we can get with that? Thanks a lot.
Awesome. And then one last thing. I felt like I needed to say this for new players because I had a question about it the other day. Riot's patch notes are always pretty informative, but go check out Surrender at 20 for you guys. I felt like I should have mentioned them before, but I'm mentioning them now. They're amazing over there.
They're great for any new information that comes out from anybody coming from the World of Warcraft community and are at all in tune with what was going on with that. They're basically the MMO champion of League of Legends. So they're just a great go-to spot for all the League news that you want to hear when it comes to updates to the game, patch notes, basically even new skin reveals, anything like that. So
yeah.
So go support our friend Moobeat over at Surrender at 20. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to say that because I had someone ask where I could find patch notes, and instead of saying go to Riot, I said go to Surrender at 20, and they were brand new at the game. I was like, yeah, check out Surrender. Wow, I should have told you to go to Riot. Just check out Surrender at 20 anyway.
Hey, they ain't paying us. We can say who we want.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true. All right, so please.
Oh, right. If you do want to pay us, I will shill for you 24 hours a day. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, Chiro will suck your dick, so.
Well, yeah, definitely. Why not? While we're just making outlandish claims. Let's go.
And then if you have anything immediate, like you guys have any questions immediately that you want to know, you can always add us in-game as Drishin and Snagglewolf. Oh, no, you're the Snagglewolf in-game, right?
No, I'm just Snagglewolf.
Oh,
And I usually let anybody who adds me, I usually accept it, but my friends list is really full right now, so I'm kind of removing some people, and if I accidentally happen to remove you, don't take it personally, I just run out of space.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
try to keep
not-
adding as many people as I can.
He's not an actual jerk like Adam.
yeah. Also note that
Yeah.
ChiChi is AFK on client a lot, so if he doesn't
All the
respond,
time.
don't take it personally. Just get pissed at him later.
Yeah. And just keep trying to get a hold of me. I leave the game up all the time, so.
Yeah. All right, I think that is it for all of that, guys. Please, if you have anything that you want us to talk about, please let us know. Like I'm not kidding you. Like pull up your freaking Gmail and send me an email real quick, because not that we're running out of content, but we've gotten to the point where we've established enough groundwork to begin to talk about things that are a little bit more advanced. So if you have specific questions, please ask. All right. Anything else, guys?
I think that's a wrap.
Also, yeah, if somehow you found this without finding the podcast, listen to the Trinity Force podcast.
Oh yeah. Well,
Thanks, buddy.
That's kind of grand for, you know. Oh, I have one last thing. I'm going to Summoners Con on November 1st over in Burbank. So if you're going, and I'm going to have, I don't care if Pone says it's not okay or not, I'm going to give him free advertising anyway. I'm going to have a giant fuck off flag hanging out of my backpack that says Trinity Force Podcast. If you have any questions, or for whatever reason you want to like punch me in the mouth, just come on up and do it. Like, I'll be
Show
there.
your appreciation
Yeah,
for the
and-
Trinity Force Network by kicking ass Drishin in the balls.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
it.
we'd love it.
Yeah.
And I want video.
Yeah, well, and there'll be videos and everything. And,
You can send it in to Tforce Podcast, TrinityForcePodcast.com.
yeah, so take a video of you, have your friend video yourself kicking me in the balls. And it'll be just good fun for everybody involved. Everybody.
Oh, they make me so happy.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, that's all I got. That's it, guys.
All right. Take it
Thanks for
easy.
joining us, Cheer. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, ChiChi.
Yep, my pleasure, guys. Love to do it again.
All right, take care, guys.